I hate to say this, but some furniture should never be painted. And I know I sound like a hypocrite because I paint furniture all the time. But even I know when to not mess with some pieces and just leave it alone. So when I found this dresser at my local thrift store, it broke my heart seeing it in such a bad shape. Just by looking at the dresser and inspecting the inside of the drawers, I instantly knew it was a vintage piece. And there was some beautiful wood hiding underneath all that paint and MDF board. And honestly, it should be a crime what someone did to this piece. But today I'm gonna try and solve this crime by reversing time and bringing this dresser back to its glory days. This dresser is giving extra storage in an old garage kind of vibe, and my mind is blown away that someone drilled holes and attached a MDF board to the top of this vintage piece. I just can't comprehend that. But the reason I bought this piece in the first hand is its vintage quality. This piece is made of solid wood, and it's safe to say this piece is very sturdy and ready to live on for another 100 years. Removing this thick board made me question my life. It was literally so hard to remove the screws as someone used all their strength to drill them in. This was my moment of realization. Once the board was removed, surprise surprise, I uncovered beautiful oak veneer, now damaged with deep holes. It was at this moment that I realized I might not be able to restore this piece to its original look. But moving on, I removed the drawers to easily flip the dresser on its side and remove even more screws that had no purpose whatsoever. To remove the paint without damaging the veneer, which is quite thin, I used a chemical stripper. This product has saved my projects time and time again, as it melts the paint and varnish effectively within 30 to 60 minutes. To apply the gel, I use an old paintbrush and distribute the product evenly. Some people cover the gel with plastic foil to make sure the gel won't dry out, although I have never done that myself. While the gel is working, I moved on to the drawers where I removed the hardware and applied a generous amount of the chemical stripper to do its job. One hour later, I used a spatula to remove the gel with the melted paint and varnish. This is always very messy, so I make sure to use gloves and wear old clothes as the chemicals can make some damage. Now that I've removed the paint stripper, it's important to neutralize the chemicals using more chemicals. I know it doesn't make sense, but somehow it works. I use white spirits, which is called lacknafta in Swedish. I pour some directly onto the wood and scrub it off with a kitchen sponge. Afterwards, I wipe it off with a clean water and let the wood dry. To sand off the remaining varnish and bring out the veneer, I use my Orbital sander and 120 grit paper. Veneer is typically very thin and therefore very easy to sand through, which would destroy the whole project for me. To avoid that, I'm making sure to sand carefully and will not use a sanding grit lower than 120. I honestly didn't think I would be able to bring this dresser back to its original state, but here we are and I'm loving it so far. Although now I have to figure out how to fill in the deep holes and make them invisible. Can you guess what I'm using? Well, this is water-based wood filler that I'm mixing with dark brown stain, which is also water-based. I thought if you can mix sanding dust with wood filler, you should be able to do the same with stain. I've never done it before, but hopefully it would work. Now to the fun part. To give this dresser the perfect shade, I used a light paint wash. Paint wash is basically a little bit of paint mixed with water, and it looks almost like milk. I'm applying the solution with a soft paintbrush in the direction of the wood grain. As soon as one part of the dresser is covered in paint wash, I wipe it off with a kitchen paper towel. Applying paint wash on solid wood or oak veneer like this one really couldn't be easier, as the surface is not porous and you don't have to worry about the finish looking uneven or patchy. And even if it would get a little bit patchy, you can always sand it off and start right over. The dark spot on the side of the dresser was really impossible to remove. Neither sander or bleaching worked, so I decided to just let it be. Sometimes you have to pick your battles and move on. And the final step in this DIY project was water-based stain. In order to give this dresser depth and color, I used dark oak colored stain. And as you can see, I don't use any fancy applicator, but a simple kitchen sponge. And once again, I make sure to work in small sections to make sure the stain won't look patchy or uneven. And those were the steps I took to solve a furniture crime and bring this dresser back to life. I don't mean to brag, but I must say I'm quite impressed with how this dresser turned out. From the moment I brought this dresser home, I questioned my own sanity, but now that I look at this dresser and the wood popping through the stain, I am glad I rescued this vintage piece. As always, I hope to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I hope to see you in my next video.